Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast. This is Bruce Hutchin, host and executive producer. Each week you will hear tips, techniques, strategies, and personal stories from some of the best and funniest whitetail hunters in North America. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you do, tell a friend on social media. If not, tell me and I'll make it better. Thanks for listening, folks. We're heading down to Texas. We're going to connect with a good friend of mine from Columbus, Texas, Herman Brune. Now, Herman is a prolific writer for the Texas Fish and Game magazine. He's also the vice president of Texas Sportsman Association. He's been a guide and a hunter, did a lot of hunting up in Wyoming, and all around, true to earth, cowboy of the highest order, Mr. Herman Brune. This is Bruce Hutchin, your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, and I am also the executive producer. I'm here down in Shreveport, Louisiana at POMA 2017. I met a gentleman from Columbus, Texas, Herman Brune, and he's going to talk about Texas optimum breeding dates. Herm, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Bruce. I'm an outdoor writer in Columbus, Texas. I have a radio program down there on KULM 98.3. I'm also a wilderness hunting guide. I've guided for years up in Montana and Wyoming. During my time as an outdoor writer, I've had various editors ask me questions, ask me to do feature articles. One of them was on the rut. I was asked to do an article about the rut in Texas and what was, what were the biologists' predictions for the rut, and did the previous year's predictions follow through? So I looked into it. I called our whitetail manager at Texas Parks and Wildlife, our leader there, and he told me there actually was no information on the rut, and which is for Texas, that would be just incredible because they have a facility down in Hunt, Texas, where they study all this stuff all the time. And I was just befuddled with his answer that they had no material on the rut. Well, then he said, Herman, he said, I've got mountains of data on optimum breeding dates. And I said, well, all right, let's talk about optimum breeding dates. And he told me, he said, okay, it's all done by number of daylight hours. You know, if you're a horse breeder, you know, if you breed any kind of animals, you know that the breeding seasons are all according to daylight hours. It's the same thing with deer. You've got 10 regions in Texas, and he was able to tell me the exact date in each region that the optimum breeding dates began. Prior to that date, 10% of the does would already be bred. Starting on that date, the next 80% of the does would be bred, and they would be bred in 7 to 10 days. After that, the remaining 10% of the does get bred after that 7 to 10 days. And that is when, especially like if you hunt in South Texas, or you'll see a bunch of bucks, you'll see 2, 3, 4 bucks chasing one doe. That's when rattling horns works the best. That's when all the little tricks work the best. We always call that the height of the rut. It's actually the tail end of the optimum breeding dates. It's when the last 10% of the does were getting bred in South Texas. That's when the biggest bucks were getting shot. During that time that the 80% are getting bred, that's when the bucks and the does, they all go to the brush and you don't really see them. Now, what I tried to do as a hunting guide in Montana and Wyoming, I tried to apply that same type of thinking to elk. And it's been an ongoing conundrum for me because elk are more of a herd animal than whitetail deer. But I look at it, and if I know all the elk calves are born in a 2-week period, and I know what the gestation time is for an elk, then I should know the 2 weeks that the elk are doing all their breeding. And when, right after that 2 weeks, you're going to have the tail end of the cows. Same way. That's when the bulls really go wild. That's when you see these young bulls trying to sneak these cows away from the older bulls. And I tried to apply the same logic to elk that we use on these whitetails down there. And it's a little bit tougher. But it's just fun to play with. It's something, if you're a hunter, if you're an outdoorsman, you always think of every angle. You try to figure out what's going on. You try to understand what the animals are doing. And it's just some more fun information to have in your game bag when you go out in the woods. And if you go look on Texas Parks and Wildlife, if you're a whitetail hunter in Texas, on their website, you can find the optimum breeding dates in Texas for each region and when those dates start in your region. And this is all on the internet. It's at Texas Parks and Wildlife. And you can find all this information. It's just something fun to have, something fun to know and tickle your brain with and aggravate yourself.
Herman, what's your radio show?
It's News from the Camp House. Now, my radio program, we'll talk about this kind of stuff too, but then we also, my radio program was born talking about water issues. Water is a big issue in Texas. We had in 99, Buster Brown passed Senate Bill 1, and it laid out the infrastructure for how water would be managed in Texas. It includes groundwater and surface water. And they wanted everybody to have a groundwater conservation district. They wanted everybody to have a place at the table for wanting to manage water in Texas. So in order to do that, everybody had to vote on a groundwater district in their particular counties. Well, a lot of your counties are conservative folks and rural folks, and they do not want more government. And that's what they saw it as. They saw it as more government. And so it was kind of hard getting these groundwater districts passed. But like we heard this week, if you don't have a place at the table, you're going to be on the menu. So
that's true. That's a very true statement. You better have a seat at the table. No matter what you want to do in conservation, you need to have a seat at the table. Forget about bitching and crying over your beer bar with boys. You got a seat at the table.
Yes, sir. There were two issues. The water issues were one of the issues that was big when I first started my radio show back in 2000. The other one was antler restrictions in Texas. We live in an area where we've got a 13-inch antler restriction, and what that means is that trophy bucks in our part of the world have to have at least a 13-inch inside spread before you can shoot them. And it caused people to have to stop and look at deer, not shoot the first thing with horns, and it has really, really benefited our whitetail herd, our whitetail deer in our area, and as well as it has really benefited the next generation of hunters. We got kids out there. Old people have a problem with new rules. Those kids don't have a problem at all. They walk out there and sit there, and they can do it better than we can.
Well, thanks for that. Share a little bit about POMA. We are at POMA 2017, and let's wrap the show. Spend another couple minutes talking about POMA 2017 and why you come to POMA.
Why do I come to POMA? Every once in a while we have to do something just to kind of revitalize ourselves, regenerate, just get the excitement going again. If you sit at the house or just in one place too long, you get stale. And we come up here and we're with like-minded people. We're with people who are involved in conservation, involved in the outdoors, involved with wildlife, involved with all the outdoor issues. We want to see things done correctly. We want the North American model of conservation out there for everybody to understand, to know about, and to understand it. And when we come here, we get around each other and we hear new ideas. We hear how other people are doing it. And it kind of revitalizes us to go back out there and to talk to our readers and our listeners and talk to all the folks, and also trying to connect with mainstream people and help them to understand how the outdoors affects everybody.
Well, I appreciate that. On behalf of Herman Brune from Columbus, Texas, it's been great visiting with you in POMA 2017.
Thanks, sir.
We welcome Adam Lewis to the show. Now, Adam is the founder, owner of a company that does sound management. What is sound management? Well, that's what Sound Barrier is all about. Adam's going to share with us today just why Sound Barrier works. Because it eliminates sound, those little sounds that buck, you could be a quarter mile away, and guess what? He'll hear when your bow hits your tree stand ladder. He'll hear when your backpack buckle hits the stand. Yes, he will. So he wants to help you eliminate all unnecessary sounds. Ergo, Sound Management by Sound Barrier and Adam Lewis.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.